Welcome, everybody. This is a webinar. I have two co-hosts with me, Eric Santos, Chuyi Yang. All three of us started HubUX about 3 years ago with the intent of creating the very best participant management system for qualitative recruiting. So the advert is now out of the way. If you'd like to talk about HubUX, we might be able to solve any of your recruiting problems or community management problems, feel free to reach out to myself, Chuyi, or of course, Eric. The topic for today is how to thrive during an unstable job market. And to that end, we have some really interesting numbers that have been popping recently on pointing towards a recession. So the US job market, we have enjoyed, not just in the United States, but actually at a global level, one of the longest periods of prosperity, despite some of the most difficult economic challenges ever to hit us, especially in rapid succession. Despite all of this turmoil, companies have really been struggling with being able to keep up with the demands for hiring. I liked this quote a lot from joblist.com. They said, the job market remains relatively stable in Q2, despite growing concerns about the broader health of the economy. Job growth continues to be strong, and the unemployment rate is holding steady at 3.6%. It's the lowest rate since January 2020. Yet, as consumers and businesses grapple with inflation, rising interest rates, continued supply chain and COVID-19 disruptions, many worry that a recession is around the corner. Now, this particular thing was published on July 11th, 2022. Fast forward a couple of weeks to July 28th, 2022, and the US Bureau of Economic Analysis, they reported that the economy contracted for the second straight quarter, and that is widely accepted rule of thumb as being in a recession. So clearly, I don't think anyone would argue things are getting more expensive. So we're seeing inflation. That is obviously one of the drivers of the contraction of the GDP. And so, with this kind of framework, we're moving into this period of uncertainty. And yet, when we see this, we know, and we see this chart, one of the things I want to highlight is that there are really large gaps of blank space between these peaks, right? You can see the 2007, 2008 recession that hit us really hard. That was relatively long-standing. We are in this very entry-level part, and that's why the sliver in 2022 is so small. We don't exactly know how long it's going to last. But having said that, if you look out over the last eight recessions that we've documented here, we all know that they come to an end, and swiftly at that. So while things have definitely been tumultuous, we will be exiting the recessionary period, and so there is always hope. The intent of this research is answering three primary questions. How concerned are generations about being laid off in the next 12 months? What game plan does a generation have for being laid off? And the last one is, what advice would members of different generations give to everybody in order to help them and us survive economic difficulties, specifically around a layoff? And so to that, in our data, we surveyed and spoke with 300 participants in the HubUX panel. Part of our survey included a video questions. We use video questions oftentimes instead of, or in addition to, text-based open-ends. These video open-ends, along with Research Defender's API, they ensure that we're talking to real humans. And with return rates, fraud rates being really high right now, video is a great way to be able to vet that you actually are talking to real human beings. And so there's two things that popped out for us to the question, how concerned are you about being laid off in the next 12 months? When we analyze that data by generation, we see that Gen Z and millennials are significantly more concerned that they'll be laid off than their counterparts, the older people like myself, Gen X and boomers. Those are people that are 41 years of age or older. So we asked 300 people, how concerned are you about being laid off? And here are some of the things that they said.
actually have a pretty negative outlook on the job market and the overall economy within the next 12 months with such high gas prices, resurge in COVID, inflation. I think the economy is going to go pretty down because companies will not be able to afford to hire new people. The people most affected by this are going to be new graduates, people who do not have a college or high school degree, um, and people with disabilities. We probably need some sort of stimulus or at least some curbing of gas prices in order to actually protect the American economy now.
So let's break it down. Gen Z and millennials. This is just one of the people that we interviewed, of course, but she was actually pretty representative on a number of her talking points. But there were two primary concerns that repeatedly surfaced in the video open ends. The first one is that they, being Gen Z and millennials, are concerned that employers will have economic headwinds because of the increased interest rates and gas prices, et cetera. And this will cause employers to actually lay people off. The second thing that materialized or surfaced is that these economic headwinds will result in job opportunities drying up. This is especially concerning for those who are recent graduates entering the workforce and are carrying a large amount of debt, specifically around student loans. Now let's hear from a Gen Xer boomer.
So hopefully the economy will improve, but I think it might be the same as it is now. The job market, I think, will increase. More people are retiring since COVID, coming out of the workforce, working for themselves, or just enjoying retirement. Overall, the economy, I do hope it will improve, fingers crossed, but I wouldn't be surprised if it stays the same as it is now.
So as we heard from Gen X and boomers, there's really three primary items that surfaced or points of view that surfaced. The first one is, since COVID, more people are working for themselves or they are retiring and exiting the workforce. This is creating a hiring void for employers, which means that they've got to fill it. That vacuum continues to exist. The second thing is that companies are busy. Some companies are busier than they've ever been coming out of COVID, and that is continuing to drive the need to hire. And the third is that public sector jobs like teaching will continue to be in demand despite any economic headwinds. So moving out of that, the third group of people that we spoke with, which were actually a combination of generations, we had 85 employers. These are people that are operating businesses and involved in hiring and laying people off. We'll be hearing from a couple of them throughout today's session, but these individuals, they are quite literally involved in the staffing concerns. And if you are an employer, I'm sure that the recent quote you probably have heard from Fed Chair Jerome Powell resonated with you. And he said, for every 2 vacant jobs, so every 2 job openings, there is, in essence, 1 person who is actively seeking a job. So we have had a massive state of imbalance between the need for workers and the actual number of workers that are available to hire. And this imbalance has created a very competitive job market and a lot of unsustainability with different offerings that employers have. So there's 4 points that popped when we spoke with the employers. And the first one is that employees will have, in the event that there is a correction in the job market, employees will have less ability to demand benefits, different working conditions, et cetera, et cetera. This is specific to things like moving from a 5 to a 4-day work week, or even in some cases, a 3-day work week. Salaries will stabilize as opposed to going continually up. There will be less demand or less opportunity for sign-on bonuses, which are very expensive. And then the fourth thing is that there will be less employee turnover as employees will prioritize stability over potential benefits from other companies. But having said all that, let's hear it from one of our participants.
over the next 12 months, I believe we will go in some sort of a recession. I think the job market will dramatically change and employees won't have the same ability to call the shots as they currently do. I think salaries can stabilize and don't always have to be on the increase. And I think that it'll be healthier for employers. Some of the struggles we're currently faced with large sign-on bonuses and struggling to meet the demands of a new employee will dissipate. And I also hope that some of the turnover will also dissipate as employees become a bit more concerned about the recession, decide not to change jobs based on uncertainty.
So in that framework where we see more equalization in or stabilization, I should say, in the actual like job market versus the number of people that are actually looking for jobs, that balance is actually healthy. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. If you are impacted by a layoff, that doesn't feel great. That isn't great. That's really hard and difficult to cope with. However, there are still a lot of companies that are hiring and will continue to hire. We've seen a lot of layoffs that have happened in the tech sector, but we're also seeing a lot of hiring that is happening outside of the technology sector. And so I wanted to spend just a few minutes with, pardon the mental double middle finger here, but creating a framework or some understanding of why companies actually do layoffs. The intent is to help inform you as a non-operator so that rationale can maybe help you feel a little less bad and a little less alone in the event that you are impacted by layoffs. The first one is lower wages in other countries. So obsolete job functions is a big reason why companies do layoffs. You see this happen in the last 10 years around warehouse automation. So you can Google warehouse automation and you'll see some amazing robots running around, getting orders, fulfilling orders, stocking shelves, doing quite literally all the things that used to be done by humans. And they're doing it very efficiently. In fact, like terrifyingly efficiently. And so the people that used to actually do those jobs were subsequently cut. And it's easy, oftentimes it's easy to identify if you have a job that is potentially going to be obsolete because of automation. And if you do have or find yourself in that situation, it's very important that you identify skills that will either elevate you out of that job so that you can become the manager of the robots, so to speak, or into maybe a different vocation altogether. The second reason is what I started with accidentally, and that is improved profitability. And that's usually a function of jobs that are outsourced to lower wage markets. So I'll give you a great example for me. At Decipher, we had about 200 employees at the time, 50 of which were doing survey programming, and more than that, maybe 100 that were doing survey programming and 50 that were doing QA. There was a point in time where we looked at outsourcing those jobs or some of those jobs to lower job markets like India or Bulgaria. And the benefit for us there was just simply gross margin, our ability to get the same work done at half the price. And then the third reason why people or companies decide to do layoffs is really around economic difficulties. So, going back to my own personal experiences at Decipher, when we first started the business in 2000, Jamie and I did $1 million of revenue. We hired about 8 staff. In our first year, we thought we were really smart, and then the dot-com bust happened. When that took place, we lost 93% of our revenue in a 3-hour window. So you can imagine our ability to support the people that we had recently hired quite literally went away. And so economic headwinds or decreased sales is a primary reason why companies will oftentimes do layoffs. And I will say that it's in those times that the employee is most often caught off guard, because it's usually easy to see, look, the company is getting ready to outsource or potentially outsource jobs to lower market. Those transitions they actually never happen overnight. You can't identify those. Similarly, around automation, those are easy to identify. However, you oftentimes aren't privy to the actual financial health of the business or top line sales. And so to that end, boards make decisions, and oftentimes employees are unaware of what those are. So with all of that, I'm going to be turning it over to Chuyi to talk about how you can be prepared for a unstable job market.
Yeah, so you're going to go through different emotions, right? Ups and downs. So it's important to stay positive and proactive. So think about what you can do for yourself that can actually benefit you during these times. Here's what a participant from our panel had to say about it.
First thing that comes to mind is be the best you can be. This is not a time to be a slacker. You don't want to be the lowest performing person. Secondly, probably not the time to switch jobs. If you're looking for a sidestep, I'd say stick with the company that you're with. And lastly, save your money. It will help with the inflation. We need to slow down spending anyway. And it's going to be good to have some backup cash in case you need it.
Yeah, so I'm going to continue to tip number 2. So tip number 2, start saving. I know it might be hard to move away from like a specific lifestyle, right? But as this participant says, perhaps you don't need that one Starbucks drink every morning. So saving money was the number one tip given by our participants who were over 30 years old.
The advice I would give to employees who are trying to survive the layoff, unfortunately, we live in a very consumer-based society, capitalism. If we can just lower the consumption, not everybody needs to have a coffee outside every day. Not everybody needs the biggest phone or the biggest car. So if we can limit those things, I think we'll be better off as a society. It's not as wasteful, and it helps our pockets as well.
And then when it comes to saving, it also correlates with creating a budget for yourself. I know maybe not a lot of people do this right now, but wherever you are in your life, you should create a list, your wants and your needs, and only spend on your needs and save the rest of your money. Having a budget is the best place to start when increasing your savings. This participant goes along and says more about budgeting.
I think all employees should be responsible and they should be saving so that they have 6 months of salary saved up to tide them over in times of layoffs or even times where the hours for people are being scaled back because sales are down because of inflation and other factors that come into play.
Yeah, so having a budget always gives you a backup plan, right? So you never know when a layoff is going to happen, and it can happen tomorrow. And so just having that budget as well as savings can help save the day. You also want to invest in your network and also invest in yourself. You want to be your #1 fan. That's how I love to say it. The size and quality of your personal networks are directly connected to the number and quality of the job opportunities you have. So again, you want to always invest in yourself and in your network.
If you're in a role at a company that you love and you want to stay there for the long term, and you think that company has a viable future, then invest in yourself. Get to know what your strengths are and be a strong advocate for yourself. Also create a network of support. Identify other committed leaders who you might have an affinity with and demonstrate to them your passion, your commitment, and your energy and enthusiasm. Because even if they move on, they could potentially take you with them. The other thing you need to do is expect to change jobs on a much more frequent basis than the baby boomer generation did. So build your skills, build your network, build your confidence. Confident people are more likely to be retained and hired. So believe in yourself.
A great tip that I love others to do is to actually join Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups, grow your connections, talk to people in your industry, even maybe someone who might be in a different industry but has the same job role as you. I think that'll be a great way to get your foot into the door. So your skills, tip number 5, never stop learning and don't get comfortable. So once we settle into a job, we tend to forget to stop learning outside of work. So take time to develop new skills that could actually help you evolve.
I think the secret isn't really remaining employed. I think the secret is remaining employable. So continue to work on your skills, continue to, hone the craft that you chose to do. Be a good employee, get to work on time, show that you're interested. I think that's how you stay employed.
Another great tip is to do Google certificates, have online training. They're really easy to access and some of them are free and they're great. And you can put them on your LinkedIn profile and more people will be attracted to you that way. I'm going to hand off the next few tips to Eric Santos, our co-founder, and he's going to start off with talking about side hustles.
Thanks, Tree. Hello, everyone. So with my tip talking about side hustles, some of these previous mentioned tips are really great. Some of them are defensive, such as saving money and budgeting. Side hustle is a great one to be offensive. And side hustle can be a variety of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be the gig economy, which is a great side hustle if you guys like driving. So Uber Eats, Uber, Grubhub, etc. But it can be a side business or coaching, or if you're good at a skill, consulting with that. And the beauty is you don't have to start once you're laid off. You can start now. And then if the unfortunate event that you are laid off, you can either scale to do that full time or start a business or just use it as kind of a life raft until you're able to find other employment. And here, this participant talks about this pretty great.
So a piece of advice that I like to offer to anybody who's just trying to survive a layoff, just try to do your best, be a great worker, do a great job and be good at what you do. Sometimes, even if you're a great worker, of course, you still could get laid off. So in that situation, you would have to have a plan B, maybe like a side hustle, or just simply apply elsewhere.
Great. All right, tip 7. So, this may not be applicable to everyone, just depending on where they're at in life. But as you'll see shortly with this participant, she was working a position that wasn't minimum wage in a job. And in the interim, she used minimum wage job as a lifeboat, similar to a side hustle. Pride is not worth it if there's no income coming in. And if it's something that you have to do for a few months until you can find another opportunity, there's no shame in doing a minimum wage job or side hustle or anything like that. And this participant specifically used it for a few months as a life raft until she found another position.
So unfortunately, I have been laid off in my life before. That was my first job. And I did get unemployment for a few months. I think it was 6 months. But my advice to someone who's about to be laid off would be to breathe. I am sorry this is happening to you, but to contact their network right away. Other managers, clients, people that they were working with, and see if they know any jobs that are open in the area, or if they recommend contacting any other companies that are hiring, people who have resumes of yours. And also save, because you don't know how quick you're gonna get the next job. And when I got laid off and I was applying to other jobs, I worked at Carl's Jr. For a few months just to make sure that I had some income coming in while I was looking for the next job. So yeah, good luck.
Honestly, it's a real pleasure to have these participants on our panel. This one is another example of an employer, and she makes some great tips she makes a few tips in this video, but specifically around recruiting. as you'll see shortly. So, networking gets you the job, skills keep it. So just having a Rolodex of recruiters or other people that you can reach out to and network hard was definitely crucial when trying to find another position after a layoff. And she speaks very eloquently and describes this in this video here.
Advice to people who are laid off. Just had that at my company and gave them a lot of advice. First thing was to make sure that they breathed. That is the first thing I tell them, that this has happened to everybody. Everybody that I know in the world has been laid off at some point. Next is to make sure their resume is up to date. And I offered, of course, for those individuals to look at it and give some feedback. Then network. You have to network. I still believe it's who you know to get a job and what you know to keep your job. And also with recruiters, right now with the way the market is, recruiters, are really going after and supporting organizations. But they're going to get through this if they want to work. That's the main thing, if they want to work.
It was a great video. And tip 9, the last tip, is pretty self-explanatory, but it is that don't be afraid to ask for help, especially if you have a family to feed. Don't let pride get in the way. This participant talks about using unemployment and food stamps. Again, pride isn't worth it. And it's never, no one's ever in a position to not ask for help. And if your family needs it, definitely utilize it.
I would advise employees to go get employment and get on food stamps.
Great. Thank you. So those were all the tips. As you'll see in a common element in the video, a few of the participants say to breathe. So at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. It may feel like it when it happens, but skills are transferable to any organization. So assuming you've developed skills during your tenure at your position, there will be other organizations looking to utilize those skills. So, during this time, do your best to stay positive, go on walks, use that time to reinvent yourself, learn new skills while you're looking for a new position and doing the other tips before mentioned. This study was conducted on HubUX. So all these participants came from our panel, and all the video questions you saw here were actually recorded using our video audition question type. So if you guys ever want to run a study like this and record short video, really quick turn and affordably, feel free to sign up on hubux.com, or if you need help and want a demo or help with setup, feel free to email me at eric@hubux.com. We genuinely appreciate your guys' time today and showing up, and thank you so much. Have an amazing day.